This is not another boring Australia video. Here you will hear 21 fresh, rarely told facts that reveal the country's hidden side, things you won't hear in the usual documentaries. Stick with us until the last second, subscribe, and discover Australia like never before. 1. Canberra as a compromise capital. Most people assume Australia's capital should naturally be Sydney or Melbourne, but the rivalry between these two giants was so fierce in the 19th century that neither city could win. The solution? A brand new city built from scratch, planted right between them. Canberra. Officially chosen in 1913, Canberra was designed by American architect Walter Burley Griffin and deliberately placed inland to avoid favoritism. It is not the biggest, nor the flashiest city, but it represents balance in a nation that thrives on compromise. Today, Canberra houses the country's parliament, national museums, and embassies, yet many Australians joke that it still feels more like a giant park than a bustling metropolis. The story of its creation says a lot about Australia itself: practical, fair-minded, and willing to build something new instead of fighting endlessly. 2. Perth is one of the most isolated big cities in the world. Perth, the capital of Western Australia, holds a strange record. It is one of the most isolated major cities on Earth. Imagine this. Its closest big neighbour is Adelaide, and that's over 1,300 miles away, basically the same distance as London to Rome. The nearest large foreign city is Jakarta in Indonesia, which is actually closer than Sydney or Melbourne. Because of this isolation, Perth developed its own unique identity, blending laid-back coastal vibes with an entrepreneurial spirit. It has some of the sunniest weather of any Australian city, and its beaches, like Cottesloe or Scarborough, look like postcards. Locals sometimes joke that they live in the world's biggest small town, because despite being home to over 2 million people, it still feels relaxed and community-driven. Perth's remoteness has shaped its character, making it a true outlier among global cities. 3. Crown Casino in Melbourne. When people think of Melbourne, they often picture coffee culture and street art, but few realize it is also home to one of the largest casinos in the world, Crown Casino. Opened in 1994 on the banks of the Yarra River, this entertainment complex is not just about gambling. It spans over 3 city blocks and includes luxury hotels, high-end restaurants, designer boutiques, cinemas, and even a giant events center. It is so vast that walking through the entire complex can feel like exploring a small city within the city. The casino floor alone is larger than many international airports, attracting millions of visitors every year. Crown is also famous for hosting celebrity events, from film premieres to major sporting galas. For Melbourne, it's more than just a casino. It's a glittering hub of nightlife and culture, a symbol of how the city balances sophistication with fun. 4. Voting is compulsory in Australia. In most countries, voting is seen as a right, but in Australia, it is also a duty. Since 1924, Australians have been legally required to cast their vote in federal elections. And those who skip it without a valid excuse can face a fine, usually around $20 Australian, which is about $13 American. This law was introduced to ensure high participation and keep democracy representative. And it works. Voter turnout often exceeds 90%, one of the highest rates in the world. While some complain about being forced to choose When they are uninterested in politics, many see it as a civic responsibility, similar to paying taxes or serving on a jury. The result is a political culture where people are more engaged, and governments know they must appeal to the entire population, not just the few who show up. 5. Fraser Island, the world's largest sand island. Fraser Island, known to the indigenous Butchulla people as Kagari, is the largest sand island on the planet, stretching more than 75 miles in length. What makes it remarkable is that despite being made almost entirely of sand, it is covered in lush rainforests, crystal-clear freshwater lakes, and tall eucalyptus trees. Scientists still marvel at how massive forests can grow in pure sand thanks to natural fungi enriching the soil. The island is also home to wild dingoes, considered some of the purest in Australia, and its beaches are so wide they double as highways and even airstrips for small planes. Fraser Island is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and adventurers flock here to drive four-wheel vehicles over endless dunes, swim in the turquoise Lake Mackenzie, or explore shipwrecks along the shore. It's a surreal mix of desert and jungle, proving nature loves breaking its own rules. 6. The national anthem was only introduced in 1984. It may surprise many that until the 1980s, Australians still sang "God Save the Queen" as their national anthem. It wasn't until 1984 that Advance Australia Fair was officially adopted after years of debate about identity and independence. The song itself had been written back in 1878 by Peter Dodds McCormick, a Scottish-born composer, but it took more than a century to be chosen as the anthem. Even then, it wasn't without controversy. Some felt it lacked energy compared to other anthems, while Indigenous Australians pointed out it didn't represent their heritage. Over time, the lyrics were even slightly changed to make them more inclusive, replacing phrases like "young and free" with "one and free." Today, the anthem symbolizes Australia's unique path, proud of its British roots, but eager to assert its own voice on the world stage. 7. Australia has one of the highest immigration rates in the world. Australia is often called a nation of immigrants, and for good reason. Almost 1 in 3 residents was born overseas. Since the end of World War II, the country has actively welcomed millions of newcomers from Europe, Asia, and beyond to help build its economy and society. Today, Sydney and Melbourne are among the most multicultural cities on the planet, where you can hear over 200 languages spoken and find food from nearly every culture on Earth. Immigration has shaped everything from business to sports to the national cuisine, making Australia incredibly diverse for its relatively small population. This constant flow of cultures has also sparked debates about integration, but most Australians proudly embrace their country's global mix. Few nations can say their identity is so deeply tied to welcoming people from every corner of the world. 8. The Australian dollar was one of the first polymer banknotes in the world. In 1988, Australia became the very first country to issue a full set of polymer banknotes, revolutionizing the way money was made. Unlike traditional paper notes, these bills are printed on a type of plastic that makes them more durable, harder to counterfeit, and even waterproof. Yes, you can drop them in the ocean and they'll survive. The technology was developed by the Reserve Bank of Australia in collaboration with the CSIRO, the National Science Agency. Over time, the system became so successful that dozens of other countries adopted it, from Canada to the United Kingdom. Each note also carries sophisticated transparent windows, holograms, and indigenous-inspired artwork, making them not only practical, but beautiful. Today, the Australian dollar, worth around 66 American cents, is recognized as one of the most secure currencies in circulation. 9. Australia has more camels than the Middle East. It sounds unbelievable, but Australia actually has the largest population of wild camels in the world. Yes, more than Saudi Arabia or Egypt. These animals were first brought to the continent in the 19th century to help with exploration and transport across the vast deserts of the outback, where horses and oxen simply couldn't survive. When trucks and railways eventually took over, the camels were released into the wild, and they thrived. Today, estimates suggest over 1 million feral camels roam across Western and Central Australia, making them both a curiosity and a problem. They damage farmland, compete with native species, and even wander into remote towns looking for water. Yet at the same time, they're exported back to the Middle East for meat and racing, turning an imported animal into a modern industry. It's a perfect example of how Australia always surprises with the unexpected. 10. One of the world's largest gold nuggets was found in Australia. Back in 1869, in the goldfields of Victoria, two miners named John Deason and Richard Oates stumbled upon a massive lump of gold so big they could barely lift it. This discovery, later named the Welcome Stranger, weighed over 200 pounds and remains the largest alluvial gold nugget ever found. Imagine the shock of striking the earth and realizing you've uncovered a fortune worth millions of dollars in today's terms. Australia's gold rushes of the 19th century attracted people from all over the world, reshaping the country's economy and population. Towns popped up overnight, and fortunes were made and lost just as quickly. The legacy of those days still lingers, with museums across Victoria proudly displaying gold nuggets and mining equipment. The story of the Welcome Stranger perfectly captures Australia's reputation as a land of hidden treasures. 11. The Great Barrier Reef is so large it can be seen from space. Stretching for over 1,400 miles along Queensland's coast, the Great Barrier Reef is the largest living structure on Earth. It is made up of more than 3,000 individual reefs and 900 islands, creating a marine paradise that supports an estimated 10% of the world's fish species. Astronauts have confirmed that its vibrant turquoise patterns are visible from orbit, making it not only a natural wonder, but also a planetary landmark. Sadly, this beauty is fragile. Rising sea temperatures and pollution have caused widespread coral bleaching in recent decades. Despite these challenges, the reef still attracts millions of visitors each year, whether for diving, snorkeling, or simply sailing across its sparkling waters. The Great Barrier Reef is more than just an Australian treasure. It's a global icon that reminds us how breathtaking and vulnerable our natural world can be. 12. Australia introduced the world's first seatbelt law in the 1960s. In 1970, the state of Victoria made history by becoming the very first place in the world to make wearing seatbelts compulsory. At the time, road deaths were tragically common, and the simple act of buckling up was seen as a revolutionary idea. The law quickly spread across the rest of Australia, and within a decade, most developed countries followed suit. Studies showed dramatic drops in fatalities and serious injuries, proving that this small regulation was one of the biggest public safety breakthroughs of the century. Australians often take pride in being pioneers in road safety, and today, almost everyone instinctively clicks their seatbelt without thinking twice. What seems so ordinary now was once groundbreaking, and it all started in Australia's push to protect its drivers and passengers. Team. Australia is one of the few countries where Coca-Cola doesn't dominate the market. Around the world, Coca-Cola is usually the undisputed king of soft drinks, but in Australia, it faces an unusual rival, a homegrown brand called Kirk's and other local favorites. In fact, some regions prefer lemonade, ginger beer, or the uniquely Aussie Passiona, a passion fruit-flavored soda that has been around since the 1920s. Local tastes are so strong that Coca-Cola has had to adapt its marketing and product range, introducing special editions just for the Australian market. While Coke is still widely available, it does not hold the same overwhelming dominance as in the United States or Europe. This reflects Australia's independent streak, where even in something as simple as soft drinks, people like to support local flavors. It's a reminder that not everything global can easily replace what Aussies see as uniquely theirs. 14. The Australian accent is considered one of the hardest for foreigners to understand. Although English is the national language, the way Australians speak often leaves visitors scratching their heads. The Aussie accent developed in the 19th century from a melting pot of British, Irish, and even Cockney dialects mixed with a laid-back lifestyle that clipped vowels and dropped consonants. Words are shortened. Afternoon becomes arvo, breakfast is brekkie, and McDonald's is simply Macca's. To make things trickier, Australians use a huge range of slang that outsiders rarely know. Linguists say the accent is among the fastest spoken forms of English, with a rhythm that can sound almost musical to trained ears. Even native English speakers from America or Britain sometimes struggle to keep up in casual Aussie conversation. Yet, this distinctiveness is also a source of national pride, an unmistakable sound that instantly tells you someone is from down under. 15. Australia is home to the world's longest golf course, the Nullarbor Links. Imagine a golf course so big that it stretches across 2 states and covers more than 850 miles. That's the Nullarbor Links. Opened in 2009, it runs along the Eyre Highway from Kalgoorlie in Western Australia to Ceduna in South Australia. Each participating town or roadhouse along the route contributes a single hole, complete with its own unique hazards, from red dust fairways to kangaroo shopping across the greens. Playing the full course can take several days, and golfers often drive for hours between shots, making it more of an epic road trip than a standard game. It was designed not just for sport, but also to attract tourists to the remote Nullarbor Plain. The result is a quirky blend of endurance, travel, and golf, a challenge that only Australia could dream up. 16. In Australia, crocodile and kangaroo meat are traditional dishes. While the rest of the world might see these animals as exotic, for Australians, they are part of everyday cuisine. Kangaroo meat, low in fat and high in protein, has been eaten by Indigenous Australians for thousands of years and is now found in supermarkets and restaurants across the country. Chefs serve it in gourmet styles, grilled steaks, sausages, known as kangabangas, or even carpaccio. Crocodile meat, mostly sourced from the tropical north, tastes like a cross between chicken and fish and is often marinated and barbecued. Tourists are often surprised to find these dishes on menus, but locals see them as a way of celebrating Australia's unique wildlife and heritage. Beyond these, emu burgers and witchetty grubs also appear in bush tucker traditions, proving that Australian cuisine has always been bold, inventive, and deeply connected to the land. 17. Australia has the world's longest straight railway line. Across the vast emptiness of the Nullarbor Plain runs a railway so straight it almost looks unreal. Stretching for 297 miles without a single curve, this section of the Trans-Australian Railway is the longest dead-straight rail line on Earth. Built in the early 20th century to connect the east and west coasts, it was a monumental project, carving through one of the harshest and most remote landscapes in Australia. The line is still in use today, carrying massive freight trains and the legendary Indian Pacific passenger train, which offers one of the most iconic rail journeys in the world. From the window, passengers see endless desert, kangaroos, and star-filled skies at night, making the ride both monotonous and strangely hypnotic. It's a reminder of Australia's vast scale, where even a straight line can run longer than some countries. 18. Australia has a lake that is bright pink in colour, Lake Hillier. On Middle Island, off the coast of Western Australia, lies Lake Hillier, a body of water that looks like it's been dyed with bubblegum. The lake's striking pink colour is permanent. It doesn't fade or change with the seasons, and scientists believe it comes from algae and salt-loving bacteria that produce red pigments. Even when scooped into a bottle, the water stays pink, making it one of nature's strangest spectacles. The lake is only about 2,000 feet long, but its contrast with the deep blue Southern Ocean just a short distance away creates an unforgettable view. You can't swim in it, but sightseeing flights over the island give travelers a breathtaking perspective of this natural oddity. Lake Hillier is proof that Australia's landscapes often look more like fantasy paintings than real life. 19. Lake Eyre is the largest salt lake in the world, but it rarely fills with water. Located in the harsh deserts of South Australia, Lake Eyre is a massive salt basin that usually lies bone-dry, gleaming white under the sun. At over 3,100 square miles, it is the largest salt lake on Earth, yet most of the time, it looks more like a blinding salt pan than a body of water. Only once every few years, when heavy rains flow down from Queensland, does the lake partially fill, transforming it into a vast inland sea. When this happens, it sparks a dramatic explosion of life. Flocks of pelicans arrive in the thousands, fish appear, and wildflowers bloom in the surrounding desert. The flooding events are so rare that Australians treat them almost like a festival, with tourists and scientists racing to witness the transformation. Lake Eyre is a powerful reminder of how fragile and surprising Australia's landscapes can be. 20. Australia enforces some of the world's strictest tobacco packaging laws. In 2012, Australia became the first country to introduce plain packaging for cigarettes, stripping away logos, bright colours, and glossy designs. Instead, every pack must be a dull olive green, chosen because it is scientifically proven to be the least appealing colour and display graphic health warnings covering most of the surface. The goal was simple: make smoking unattractive, especially to young people. Tobacco companies fiercely fought the law in courts around the world, but Australia stood firm and ultimately won. Since then, smoking rates have declined significantly, and many countries, including the United Kingdom, France, and New Zealand, have adopted similar measures. Walking into a shop in Australia, you won't see rows of shiny cigarette packs. Instead, they're hidden away, reminding everyone that smoking is no longer a symbol of glamour, but a serious health risk. 21. Australia is increasingly turning to geothermal energy. While Australia is famous for its coal and mining industries, it is also quietly investing in the heat beneath its surface. Geothermal energy taps into underground reservoirs of hot water and steam. And Australia has some of the world's largest untapped reserves, particularly in South Australia. Pilot plants and research projects are already proving that this clean, renewable source could one day supply vast amounts of electricity. Unlike solar or wind, geothermal runs 24 hours a day, making it a reliable partner in the shift away from fossil fuels. Towns like Birdsville in Queensland have even used small geothermal systems for decades. Although the industry is still young compared to solar farms or offshore wind, it represents a promising future where Australia's energy could come from the same ground that holds its legendary minerals. It's the land giving back in a new, sustainable way. That was 21 little-known facts about Australia, and I bet some of them truly surprised you. This country never stops offering something new to learn, and that's what makes it so captivating. Stick around by subscribing, liking the video, and dropping a comment. I'd love to hear which fact was your favorite.